collection a name. Here's what you specify. This is you naming your collection. And then you're saying the schema that the collection must map to is this. So basically we're saying that we have a collection name called task, and that collection is going to adhere to all of these rules that you specify. Let me ask somebody this last question. One last thing in this file. I want somebody in the back to answer. If I'm saying that this object here, task, is very, very important. Without this, we can't do anything to the task collection. What do you think the last line of this file is going to be? Export. Very good. If I was given bonus marks, I would have tell me a name when at the end of the class. That's like off the bat, on point. Good. You have to export it. Why? Because the other files would need access to this in order for us to create, read, update, delete. So we have to export, because remember, this JavaScript file is isolated from all the JavaScript file. A JavaScript file cannot automatically see another JavaScript file unless you export it. So here we're going to say, how do we export again? Module dot exports equal whatever you exported. Notice we haven't written a single querying statement yet. Not a single query statement. When I fill out this, okay, everyone, when I fill out this form and I click add task, what do I want to happen? I want to store the task, right? Where in my code I have to write, I want you all to think, where in my code I have to write, because we have to write the code somewhere, would I put that code to store this information in the database?
Post request.
Right, in your post request. Well, on fire today. In your post request. So let's open up developer tools so we can see where are we sending this to. Jesus Lord. Oops, sorry. Right, watch this. So when we press this submit button, which is add task, we send in a post request, and the post request action, the route is /task/add. Where are we going to find our route? /task/add. Where? In the controller. Before, where we used to put all our routes? In the entry point. Before we used to put all our routes in the entry point file. Remember when we started this course, that's where we said that our entry point file is going to get bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger, and it's going to be very, very messy. So we start putting our routes, we're separating our routes into different controllers. Task, all the task routes will be in the task controller. All the user routes will be in the user controller. So that means this is a task route, so we go to the task controller. And here we look for router.post. Now I want to take 5 minutes to deviate to this because I'm watching people assignment 2 and I see some people, I'm assuming some people still don't understand this. So I'm going to take some time to explain this before we go further. Now you notice in this route I don't have, who could tell me why I don't have this? Based on who watched the video when I was talking about controllers. Why I don't have it here? Because my route says /task/add. Why don't I have in the route, in the controller, /task/add? Why do I have this?
Yeah, already in the task. Because the scope of this is the task. So in your entry point file, you define the route with /task, so you can continue from there.
Right, very good. So let me explain what she said. Very good. In the entry point file, I already defined the scope. If you watch at my entry point file, here I'm saying app.use, and remember app.use means every HTTP request, regardless if it's get, post, put, or delete. Every HTTP request is going to test to see if the URL has /task in it. So let's assume I have a route right, so let's assume I have 4 routes, right? /task, /task/add, /task/list, /task/edit, /task/delete. What this is saying here is that if my route has /task, I want you to look into this object. Now this object, task route here, is loading the controller. So basically what I'm saying is that once my route has /task, I want you to go into the controller, the task controller, and check for anything that comes after the /task. So that is why inside your route, you do not put back the task. You just put what comes after the / that you specify here. Because if you do this, which is what I see a lot of people doing for assignment 2, if you do this, what would Express think your route is? Right, very good, Katharina. Express is going to think that your route is this. /task/add. And that is something that doesn't exist. So remember with this controller concept, when you load in your router, your controllers in your entry point file, and you put /task, Jesus Lord, and you put /task, it's going to go into the controller and only look for what comes after what is specified here. So in your controller, you're going to start from what comes after the /task, right? So we're going to remove this because the route is not /task/add. Right, we make sure that it's post, meaning that this is only going to be executed when what? When the form is submitted. Good. Let me make sure I delete all of these things. Okay, so let me ask some intuitive questions now. What is the first thing we're going to do inside of this route handler? What do you think is the first thing? I press the add task button. What is the first thing I want to do?
Check what is
right, want to get the information. Right, now tell me the code. Good, but very good. You want to get the information from the form. Very close. Request that body, that the name, right? So, what we need to do to ensure that we are plucking out the right data, we need to open the view. We need to open that to see the form, because there's no way we could know what the name of the file is. So, we're going to go to views, task. We're going to open up the task add form. So we're going to say request that body that this. Request that body that this. Request that body that this. And we're going to store it in an object. So what we're going to do? So I'm going to put, you could do the structure as well. Yeah, you could do the structure as well. Fetch, what do I want to say? Fetch data from, fetch users data from the task add form. So I'm going to create an object, you'll understand why. I'm going to call the object new user.
Should be new task.
task. Right, I'm going to call it new task. And in here,
Task add form, right?
if what?
Form.
Yeah.
It's from.
Which part? Oh,
It's just. Okay,
We go by the name.
right, yeah, it's the name. So what we're doing here is we're saying request dot body dot.
Title.
You make sure. Always go back to the form and make sure, because it's very easy for you to misspell. So request that body dot this name. The description, due date, request that body that due date, which other one? Priority,
Dude.
request that body that priority. I think that's the name. You'll double check it after. Do we have to do one for status?
You misspelled dude.
Which,
Or you spelled it right, but you misspelled. Yeah, and then do the other one.
oh,
Dude date.
Dude.
dude. Question, do we have to do one for status? Yes, no, maybe.
If you don't do it, it'll give the default value.
We're not going to do one for status because status has a default value. Are we going to do one for create date? Create date has a default value, right? Right. So the first thing we do is we fetch the user's data from the task form. But actually, this should really be the second thing, huh? Before we do all this, what we want to do?
Get the task.
Get the?
Get the task variable in
You're on fire today. The very first thing we want to do is get the task model. Because without the task model, we cannot insert into the database. That's the very, very, very first thing you want to do. Think about it. If I said that this variable, this model variable, is how we interact with the database, how we interact with the task collection. That means if we don't import this here, we could do all of this. We could fetch the data. It's never going to be inserted. So the very first thing we want to do is import the task model object so that we can perform CRUD operations on the collection. Now I'm going to ask you a question. Am I doing my importation statement in this method, or am I doing it to the top? Which one makes more sense? Both will work, but which one makes more sense? Am I doing my require here, or do I do it at the top? Do I do this? Do I import it here, or do I import it to the top? Now again, both ways would work, but which one makes more sense? My friend says right there. Right, remember we're going to be using it in other routes. Think about it. When we come to this route, which is task/list, and we want to pull from the database, we don't want to redeclare the variable there again. We also want to get description. We don't want to redeclare there again and edit and delete and no. So we're going to declare it to the top. So I'm going to call it task model. And remember, when you want to import something that you exported, you use require. Why is this wrong?
Because it's multiple.
No JS.
Okay, I could accept that. But why, what is it, if I ask you this for 2 marks in the exam and say, why, okay, not why is it wrong, but what will Express think if I write this, line 5? Actually, it will think something else.
Oh, import the whole.
It will think close to what both of you all say. Give me another. If we just write task, what would it think? Or task.js? It will think something. right, it will think that it is a third-party package. All the third-party packages that we have been exporting, all we do is write the name, express. All we say is require express. When we import body passer, all we said was body passer. When we imported handlebars, all we said was express handlebars. So it's going to check the node modules folder, because that's what the third-party package is, and then it's going to say another acronym, not RTFM, it's going to say WTF. Right? So remember, when you import in third-party modules and packages that you create, you cannot just specify the name. Now, typically, you would do this if the file, we're not going to do this, if the file of where importing this is on the root. Now, this is not on the root. This task.js is not on the root. So in order for us to access, right, so watch, task.js is in controller. We want to access something in models. How do we do that? Right, so we're going to say, and the .js is optional. So now that we have the task model, in this entire form, in this entire file, we could do any of the 4 CRUD operations and tasks. We could create, we could read, we could update, we could delete. But what we're going to do is we're going to create now. So we imported the task model object. We fetched the user data. Now we're going to insert a task into the task collection. So let's talk about the rules. When inserting, how do I want to phrase this? When inserting a document into a collection, you must create an instance of the model object and then have that instance call the save method. So I'm going to repeat this and you're all going to tell me, because some of these things, some of these terms and jargons you all should be familiar with. The rule of Mongoose, so this is the rule according to Mongoose. When you want to insert a document into a collection, you have to do 2 things. 1, you have to instantiate the model object of the collection that you want to insert in. When I say instantiate, what does that mean?
Create the actual
object, right? Creating an instance means creating an object. You have to create, you have to instantiate the model, right? 2, when you instantiate the model, that instance you're going to use to call the save method, which will insert into the database. How do we create an instance of something in JavaScript? When you have a class, how do you create an instance of something? Right, you use the new keyword. Very good. So watch what we're going to do here. We're going to say new task model. Whatever you call this, this is what you have to instantiate. This would be, based on the fact that we could do this, what you would say task model is. It's a class, right? So we created a new instance of task model, which will create a document. The constructor of this class would receive what? What do you think it would receive? New task. Think about it. If we created a new, if we inserted into our collection, and we are saying that when you create an instance of the model, it's going to insert into the database. What we want to insert? We want to insert this. So here you pass new task. Or if you don't want to create, like let's assume we didn't do all of this, you could have actually created the object in here. And say title, request, that body, that title. Description, it's up to you. I like to create the object before. Now, let's talk about some rules here before we do the last 2 lines of code. The names that you name, all of the properties inside of this object must match what? What do you think it must match?
The name in the form.
Right, the name not in the form.
Not the form.
Not in the form. The name in the what?
In the collection.
The schema. In the schema. Must. So you cannot come here and say title 2. Or description 2. Mongoose will throw an acronym. I don't need to tell you what the acronym is. Right? So Mongoose doesn't care about the order in which you write it. So the order doesn't have to be the same order that you specify in your schema. It doesn't have to be title first, then description, then due date. All Mongoose cares about is that the name is the same. The name must be the same. Which is this: title, description, due date, priority. We are going to pass this entire object to this. And then, this is the rule. So to insert, you do 2 things. One, you create an instance of the model, and you let that instance receive the object filled with the data that you want being inserted into the database. The second thing is that you take the instance and you call the save method. And this will insert into the database. Notice we haven't written a single query. We haven't written any insert into table name, parentheses, column, comma, column, values. We haven't written any of that. You create the instance of the model, you pass the object. What you pass to the model when you created the object is that object with data that you want being inserted, which is from the form, and you call the save. What do you think the save will do? Based on what we've been doing so far, the save is going to generate something.
Very statement we can't see.
Well, yes, it will do that behind the scenes, but in terms of some, we have to write. Will the save happen automatically? Is it going to happen?
Promise.
Right, so it's not going to happen immediately. It may take a while to save because it's 2 different servers. So therefore, it's going to generate a promise. Therefore, our code should be then.catch. Now you realize that every database operation, I say this now, every database operation we do is going to be then catch, because all of them are asynchronous. So that then dot catch. Again, you do not put semicolon here. If you put semicolon, it's not going to be able to call it that. So again, the then calls a callback function. Error could when inserting data into the task collection. And then we put what the error is. Right. What do we want to put inside of the then? What do we want to do when the task is inserted? Right, very good. We want to redirect them to the that listing page. So here we see res.redirect. And this is the route. So res.redirect would redirect them to this route, which is a get, which will load the task dashboard. Now we can test our code. So we're going to test it. Once we didn't spell anything incorrectly, everything should work. Then we'll run through the entire thing again. I'm going to leave up the code so that you can see, and then we'll test. In the meantime, yeah, I do too. You also should work with your own laptop, especially with the coronavirus going around. That's why I make sure I work with this.
Mortgage, I can't afford one. But you
Actually, I
buy
went
one.
in. I went both in Walmart and No Frills, and they have none of these. And all the toilet paper is gone. Why? No, but seriously, why is it that diarrhea is one of
No,
the?
no. So there was a rumor that all the toilet paper is being manufactured in China. And because China's feeling embargoes with the coronavirus.
Oh, okay.
they think there's gonna be
So it's not people panic buying.
No, they are panic buying, but they're not panic buying because of diarrhea. They're panic buying because they don't think there's gonna be COVID.
No, it's also because it's you at the hospitals.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
You have to be quarantined.
Because I was real frustrated. I was like, is diarrhea part of the symptom? Every grocery I went to, no toilet paper. I mean, you can live without this, but come on. Crazy.
But also, a lot of the flights are really cheap right now. Oh yeah.
To go back to my home country is $400.
Yeah, to go to Portugal is like $400. So I guess it might be one for people.
Yeah, but I'm not flying.
If I die, I die.
Don't say that. You need to finish the course, get a job, buy me some lunch for teaching you to be a Obama's programmer. So,
You know what? I'll give you my yogurt again. That's fine.
now, but I don't think you should travel. And all joke aside, I don't think you
I
should
can
travel.
book it for December. Either I'm gone by then or I'll be fine by then. Who knows?
Yeah, actually booking it now in the future might be alright.
Yeah, like my brother is going to Portugal in September and the flights are $400. Why not? They're usually like $1,200.
Wow.
So
Listen, you all need to graduate, make a lot of money. So stay away from flying as much as possible. You need to enjoy the amount of money you're going to make when you graduate from this college that I'm sure you can't wait to.
So how did I see you say that?
Right, so that's what we come
the
into.
only place you can't go to now is Italy. Because, like,
Yeah. Right, so.
What am I going
Italy's
to
closed for business.
So alright, let's test this to see if it works.
I
Okay,
think
so
it works, but I don't know if I need a parts or not. It did return me.
Once it redirect you, that means it works. I'll show you how to check it just now.
Wait, can I see your cat? Can you go all the way to the end?
So the catch will always be the same thing. I just add a different message in front, but it will always be the same thing.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so let's test this. Don't fly.
That's not a task.
Flying is bad. Right. Okay, so I redirected. What does that mean?
I don't know.
Safe.
In theory, it works.
If I give you this exact question for exam and say, what does that mean? If you had to make an intuitive assumption.
And you said this is
Right, it means, well, not just the submission but work, it means that we could assume that it was inserted. Because think about it, the only way you can enter in this then is if this promise resolved, meaning it actually inserted into the database. So the mere fact that we redirected to watch task/list is proof that it's inserted. Let's add one more and then I'll show you how you check. Right. It redirect. How do we check? How do you all think we check to see if it was inserted?
Oh, consults? No.
No, not the console. How do we check to see? Because we're making an assumption here. We're making a hell of an assumption. How do we actually see the data?
DB storing our data, so it should be there, right?
Right, so where do we go?
Oh, you go to the Atlas?
Right, the Atlas. We go to the Atlas. So we go to Atlas, we go to clusters, we go to collection, and bam! Data was inserted.
Even in ID2.
Right, so let's unpack this, right? So we entered, we were telling Val not to fly, don't fly, flying is bad. Watch. You notice the due date was added automatically, today's date. Date created, The date created. Now, the date created, you notice the difference between this and this? Date created is what you call a date stamp. Stores both the date and the time. The HTML5 date picker only stores the date, right? Now, two things were added to both documents. This is what you call a document. This is a document. This is also a document. What is the two things that were added that we didn't specify in the schema? ID, and what else?
Whatever the heck V is.
Underscore V, which stands for version. So let's talk about both of them. In relational databases, when you create a table, what do you have to do? You have to specify a primary key. No SQL is so badass that you don't need to do that. It does that for you automatically. So when you insert, watch, every document that you insert, it generates this unique ID first, an object ID. That ID is considered your primary key. Because if we enter another task, let's enter another task. Yeah, it was. Every time I think about this, my blood pressure is goes sky.
I hear that they were actually family members that I threw up in my mouth a little.
Really?
Yeah.
Who?
Jon Snow and Mary. I watched it.
You have no idea what the story is.
She was okay with it. She grew up like
Right, so again, this is, so let's talk about some of the pros now with using like MongoDB. What does this remind you of? This reminds you of a regular JavaScript object. You don't have to think in terms of rows and columns as you would with a relational database. And this is one of the reasons why people are gravitating towards NoSQL databases. Because documents are JavaScript and JSON-like, it feels very natural. We don't have to rewire our minds to think, okay, how do I take this data and put it into rows and columns and split it across different tables and stuff. This looks like an object. I do have to create a primary key. It's created automatically. This is hash, right? So we're going to start the how to do a pull from the database. But before I do that, I just want to recap. So key things to remember, and I want people, please start your project Friday, Saturday. I'm begging you all. I tell everybody and everybody's laugh and say, yeah, could even start. And then the day of presentation, I hear all sorts of problems. People cry, people pour on academy performance, are winning Golden Globes and academy performance and stuff as to the reason why the application. You don't want that to happen. Right? This is a project, in my opinion, is a good project. Yes, a lot of work, but you want, in the end, when you finish the course, you could say, I did this. This is a big deal. You want to get a good co-op. You want to show this in an interview, right? You want to put a lot of effort into this project. Do not put too much effort into the user interface until the end. Get all your back-end stuff. I know everybody wants their stuff to look pretty, but remember that's not where the juice of the market is. I think the project is out of 70. Interface is only 10 out of the 70 or 12. I can't remember. Either 10 or 12. Right? So 60 marks is back-end. You want your stuff. When you finish the semester, let's assume, because you all have different courses, right? Let's assume OP, you're juggling between OP, this, and database, right? You look at the rubric and focus on where all the marks are. Obviously, everybody wants a pretty web app. I'm not saying no, but get your JavaScript, get all the functionality working, all the database functionality, then work on the prettiness. Remember, CSS is take time. CSS is very, very time consuming. This is going to take a lot of time because you have to test. Sometimes as programmers, we are very bad when it comes to, and this is just a flaw of most programmers, we are very bad when it comes to time management, right? Why? Because we assume, I'm gonna take us 2 days. And in truth and in fact, maybe your assumption of how long something is going to take will take that day. But here's what happens. You encounter a bug. Once you encounter a bug, that's it. You know that 2 days is going to become 10 days. Because sometimes depending on the bug, when you solve a bug, guess what happens? More bugs happen. Right? So, I want you all to start as soon as possible. Why? So if you get problems, you can come to me. If 120 people come to me in the last week, think about it. Logically, that is impossible. It is impossible. So you don't want to start the last week of class. You want to start Friday. You want to start Saturday, right? Form groups with each other. That forming groups don't mean that you and the person writing the same code. That's the form. Forming groups mean you're bouncing off ideas off of each other, right? You you bounce off ideas off of me, you bounce off with a friend. You want to surround yourself with people who taking the course seriously and the project, right?